I recently switched from using Windows 10 to Linux Mint, and I had a little problem getting my Dymo LabelWriter label printers to work with Linux Mint. There was a little help out there on the internet, but not a lot. I was able to figure things out, so I thought I'd put this video together to help others in the same situation. There's basically 3 steps. You have to install a printer driver. You have to install label printing software, which we use gLabels, and you have to configure gLabels to work with your printer and the labels you want to use. There's 3 packages to install. Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu, which is based on Debian, so this command should work for any of those distros. If you're using a different distro, you may want to check to see if there is a driver package for your distro. You can also look on the printer manufacturer's website for Linux-specific drivers to see if they're available. But you can install all 3 packages with this single command, which I will put down in the description. And once you get the driver installed, the printer should show up in the printer's app. And you'll see that my LabelWriter shows up here in the printer's app with my other printers. To install a gLabels software, you want to use the software manager in Linux Mint. You just go up here to the search box and type in gLabels, and the program will pop up, and you click on this to install it on your system. I have a check mark here because it's already installed on my system. It will put the icon in the Office group on the menu, in the system menu. Once you install gLabels, you run it, and you're presented with a blank window. To create your first label, click on File, and do not use Template Designer. Simply click on New to use the Select Product function. On a new installation, this would not be here. I previously created this label, and that's why it's here. What you want to do is click on this Search All tab, and the important point here is to go to page size and change it from US letter to other, which is all the way down at the bottom of the list. You can restrict the listing of the labels by changing it to your manufacturer's label. I'll select Dymo, and then you can further restrict it by selecting the label category, such as mailing and shipping products. This is the shipping label that I used, so I'll click on that and click on Next. By default, it brings up a vertical orientation because that's the way the label comes off the printer, but it makes it very difficult to create a label that way. So you want to rotate it and click on Next. This gives you all the information. Click on Apply, and here's your label. It's important to remember that the edges here are not the physical edges of the label, they're the margins. So you want to put your text and graphics and lines right up to the edge. So we create a return address by dropping some text right here, a text box, and sizing it for a return address. Now it's important to remember that you do not edit text on the label face. You always have to go to the text object properties. So we'll create a return address. Now you'll notice that the text may be bigger than the box you laid out. If you want to keep the same size text, you can simply resize the box. If you want to make the text smaller so it fits inside the box that you've created, you can come into Style under the text object properties and change the text size. We're going to keep the same size, and we'll just resize the window. Next, we're going to put in a line as a separator between the return address and the recipient address. Edge to edge. And then we drop down another text box for the recipient information. Again, right up to the edge. And we're going to size this, but we're not going to go all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see why in a minute. Again, to change the text, you would edit it in the text properties. Now, the recipient address you may want to make bigger than the return address, so you would come over here to Style, change the font size, and what you may also want to do with the recipient text block is change this vertical alignment so that it's centered, and that way as you type in the address it'll expand up and down, but it'll be centered vertically. Once you get that in there, you want to click on this icon up here for barcodes and drop a barcode right down at the bottom here. Now you want to change this to a barcode, like postal barcode. So you come over here to Style, change this to PostNet 5. The built-in just means that the data is going to be supplied here. You change this to 12345, because if you don't have 5 digits there, it shows up as invalid because you selected PostNet 5. So once you've got valid data, you'll get a barcode symbol. And at this point, you're pretty much done with your label. Now, you may want to think about how you're going to handle this. gLabels creates a separate label file for each label you create. So what you may want to do at this point is do a file, save, and save this as a default blank label. If you print off a lot of labels to a lot of different people, but you only send them once or rarely, then you don't want to have a whole bunch of files to people you're never going to send to again. So what you want to do is use your default, change the recipient information and the zip code, and then print the label out, and then exit the label software without saving it. You do not want to overwrite your default label file. So you would simply open your default label, come in here, change the recipient information to their name and address. And important, remember this, you also got to come in here and put their zip code in the barcode properties label. If you don't do that, no matter what you have for address, the machines are going to send it to zip code 12345, and no telling where your mail is going to end up. If you send to somebody often, you may want to create a label with their recipient information and their zip code and do a file save as and save it under their name. And that way you can just pull it up. The address, name and address are in there. The correct zip code is in there, and you can just print it off. I'm not doing this for subs or likes, so you don't have to click on anything. I simply want to pass along helpful information when I find it. Thanks for watching.